that was my default, people pleasing. And this might be a bit out there, but I really think it is linked to my autoimmune condition. I think it could be on some level.
If you would like to cultivate more worth, freedom and expression in your life, you're watching the right video.
And it's one of those things of a hormone imbalance that doesn't always get talked very much, but it did really hit my core in that way. And also it was hitting me at a time where, like, I was just starting to like date more and go out and party with friends and that.
Hi, I'm Faye. I'm the What If Coach. I am a certified life coach, a human design reader, and I work with my clients to help them navigate feelings of unworthiness, to shed the weight of the expectations of others, and really to step into speaking their truth. In this 10 Minutes With interview series, I interview wellness experts for a precious 10 minutes for them to share their tips and tricks and their stories of how they have cultivated more worth, freedom, and expression in their lives. Welcome everyone to the 10 Minutes With interview series. I am joined by a wonderful guest and my friend Caela Benson today, and we are talking about knowing your worth, feeling your freedom and finding your expression. Caela, lovely to have you. Please introduce yourself and tell us what's the topic that you'd like to focus on.
Thank you so much for having me today. Yes, I'm Caela. I'm an empowerment coach and a PT. I support women who have hormonal imbalances, suspected hormonal imbalances, or those who just want to feel more in flow with, especially when it comes to like fitness and lifestyle and mindset adjustments that they can make, especially when you're challenged with a hormone imbalance. And I especially like to talk about how we can overcome it and self-heal as well. It's so important to self-heal from a hormone imbalance. And there's definitely a light at the end of the tunnel. And that's what I do.
So yummy. Even listening to you describe that, I'm like, oh, that's so important.
Oh, yeah.
And what is it for you? Yeah, what's the story that you would love to share with my audience today?
Yes. Yeah. I'd love to talk about probably in my early 20s when I was first diagnosed with an autoimmune condition. And I think it's really linked to the people pleasing I was doing at the time. And I want to talk about that in more detail. So
tell us more. I'm fascinated already.
So in my early 20s, I was working in Brisbane. I'm from Brisbane, Australia. I had just finished high school. I was in my early years of university. I was studying town planning, which is something I kind of fell into, but very much loved at the time. And I started to experience lots of symptoms around my autoimmune condition. And at the time, I didn't know what that was. And I had always been really into fitness, really into exercise. I was a bit of a tomboy throughout like primary school, high school. I loved, I'm an only child. I loved playing like basketball with my dad and tennis with my dad and that kind of thing, and watching rugby with him, and also loved Barbies and wearing dresses as well. But it was a real mixture and odd blend. But I started to put on a lot of weight, and that like affected my I would say, my self-expression. I would say it affected my, just how I felt about myself and how I presented myself. And my first thing to do when that came on was to do like running challenges and try just like work it off. And I never had an issue with weight before, so it was such a shock to the system. And and I was also like, it was a whole suite of symptoms, which were like a really sucky party of symptoms, basically. Like I was
cycle at all.
I was getting like you know, more hair on my chin and all this kind of, and like on my upper lip. And it was hitting things that were like absolutely at my core of being female for me. And yeah, and losing hair off my head at the same time growing it here. And it was and it's one of those things of a hormone imbalance that doesn't always get talked very much, but it did really hit my core in that way. And also it was hitting me at a time where, like, you know, I was just starting to like date more and go out and party with friends and that kind of thing. And and it was yeah, especially like the partying aspect. Like it's a time in your life where you really, really want to be like burning the candle at both ends and having the time of your life. But the reason I'm talking all about this is I was also a constant people pleaser. Like that was my default, people pleasing. And this might be a bit out there, but I really think it is linked to my autoimmune condition. I think it could be on some level. And yeah, I know not many people talk about that, but I was an absolute doormat. Like I had a really core belief that if I said no to someone, then they wouldn't like me. And it was really, really, really strong belief. I thought I would hurt their feelings. I thought I'd disappoint them. I thought they wouldn't like me. And it was to the point when I think back and I look back, like if someone would ask me to do something and they might not even care if I did or didn't do it, but that thought I would get just before I was about to say no, I'd say, oh, you're going to hurt that person's feelings, say yes. And I would always get that. And yeah, I had no idea that, you know, I could instill really powerful boundaries and I could do it in a really loving way. And so like those two aspects combined, like as I was trying to find out what was going in my body, and it was all very concerning, and my periods were irregular, and and at the same time I was going out and partying, and at the same time a huge people pleaser. So my energy levels were flatlining constantly. Like I was just at the moment when I probably wanted to like stay home and be on the couch, I was like, right, I've got to go out with this friend because they've asked me to go out, and if I don't go out, then and equally, like I couldn't spend a Saturday night at home. Like it didn't have to be going out and partying. I just like go out for dinner, and I felt like I couldn't be alone either. So it
sounds exhausting, even as you're describing it. There's like so many elements, right? That are kind of part of, yeah.
It was totally exhausting. Yeah. And like I would love to say that instilling boundaries happened overnight. But it took years for me, because that belief was so strong that person wouldn't, they would be hurt, they would be unhappy with me if I said no, or even if I just said not tonight, not today, another time. Like I couldn't even say that.
What for you has been that transition, or helped you on the journey from never saying no or offending someone to really having, I love the way you said it, like loving boundaries and being empowered by that?
Yeah, it was my health. It was realizing, and there's a moment that really sticks out for me, that like I would go out with my friends, and at the time one of the symptoms I was experiencing was debilitating stomach pains. Like it would I haven't experienced this, but maybe it would be like contractions. I don't know. Like it was just so painful, and to the point where like I would be out for dinner with friends, and I would actually have to say, I'm sorry, I have to go lie down like on a bench outside. And this is in Brisbane in the middle of summer, so it's like fine to do that. You couldn't do that here in London. But it was like debilitating stomach pains, and I just knew that at that point I knew I needed to do something about it. And I think intuitively, like I could have gone to a doctor and said, I'm feeling stomach pains and it's happening at this time, and it was completely irregular and you could never tell when it was going to come. And at the time I was also quite orthorexic. Like I was very focused on health food. My favorite thing was to go to like the Whole Foods equivalent in Brisbane. And so my diet was pretty messed up. So like, I wouldn't be surprised. It was a mix of stress, and it was a mix of like a weird diet that like filled with like grains and all sorts of, which is great. But it wasn't very diverse. And I was just experimenting with nutrition, and now I know a lot better. But yeah, it was probably unlimited fiber intake as well, and like eating only salads, and that mix of just being really stressed about what's going in my body and what's going on in my body and not knowing, and it's mixed with also being early in my career at that point, and really trying to prove my worth as a graduate, and thinking I need to work 12-hour days to prove myself and that kind of stuff. And I remember being out for sushi with some friends, and I literally needed to go lie down, because that was the thing with these stomach pains. I could only it was only once I lay down for a little bit that it actually like subsided. Yeah. And I knew that was the only, I needed to lie down, relax, drink water, and then that was the only thing that would make these pains subside. And I think that was like a huge cue for me that like something was wrong. Like it was that debilitating that I couldn't just like keep going on with my people pleasing, keep being in 100 places at the same time, because it was just not possible. So yeah, really tuning into like, okay, if I look after my health, if I address that first and every part of it, then find out what's going on, which took, going to a doctor, nutritionist, dietitian, naturopath. Finally found out it was thyroid from doing my own investigation, and also working out it was genetic. It was right there in front of me the entire time. And then just doing so much research. I was like on every blog, just trying to work out what hypothyroidism is and how can I self-heal from it. And I would say, as strange as it sounds, instilling like the mindset part and instilling boundaries and conserving my energy is probably like, amongst like putting myself on the right medication, doing the right types of fitness. But one of the biggest adjustments has been really like, instilling those boundaries and not people pleasing as much.
It sounds like it's a holistic route, right? Like it's not just getting medical advice, but it's also really listening to yourself and those boundaries and really learning how to work with yourself.
Yeah.
Anyone listening who can hear themselves in your story, particularly early on, what would be one nugget of wisdom or piece of advice that you would share that will help them move from that place of people pleasing and saying yes to everything to more boundary, to more healthy?
Knowing that, and we touched on it before, knowing that you can set boundaries in a really like beautiful way, and it can be a form of love for that person that you're setting a boundary with. And sometimes, like I said before, they might not even be attached to whether you do or don't show up or whatever it is. And they just want to know like where you stand on it, kind of thing. And it was even like a friend might just say like, I'm going to the cinema, do you want to come too? And I would think that as if they were saying it like like, do you have to come, do you want to come? And like, if you don't come, I'll be completely alone, which they probably didn't even think of it that way. So yeah, I think knowing that it can be done in a really loving way, and knowing that it's also self-care. And also knowing that like when you're a doormat, you're not like looking after yourself very well, and you can't show up in the best way. And you might, like for that example of going to the cinema, you won't show up to your friend in the best way when you're tired, when you're exhausted, when you've had a really long week, when you're absent-minded and thinking about something else. So knowing that when you're showing up in the best way, you're truly being present with that person as well.
Caela, what you're sharing is so rich, and I'm so grateful. I could literally talk to you all day. And in the honour of our 10 minutes, I will say to those watching, I will share all of Caela's information and details so they can find you. I'll make sure that's under this video. Any parting words or parting tips for those watching?
Yeah, well, before we got started, I was just double checking the name of a book, because I think what we're talking about here is where the physical meets the kind of mindset aspect, and those two things. And there's a book called Metaphysical Anatomy, and I would really recommend that because it goes into all these kinds of like autoimmune conditions included. Yeah, I think it's really enlightening as well, and it might indicate to you where you can set more boundaries, and I think it often touches on that. So
Beautiful. And for those watching, I can recommend it also, and this is what it looks like if you go to the shop and you want to get this. So I can highly recommend it. Caela, it's an amazing recommendation. I never would have thought to suggest it. Yes, it's something that is treasured and on my bookshelf. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so grateful for your wisdom. I will, as I said, share everything below this video so people can find you. Thank you ever so much.
No problem at all. I'm honoured to be here. Thank you.
Thank you for joining me for this interview. I hope that it's been insightful. Please hit like, hit subscribe so you don't miss any of these in the future. And if you want more tips and tricks and stories about cultivating more worth, freedom and expression, come and join me over on Insta at the What If Coach Faye.